Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Outside the Panels. I am your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and as you know, I like to have my finger on the pulse on everything that's indie, anything that's Kickstarter. How about things that are even small press, aiming for Kickstarter, aiming for big things? Up now, not one, not two, but three guests, all here to talk about Raincross Press. First up, we have a nemesis to some, David Howard. David,
hey, what's going on? Yeah, I'm excited to be here. After that intro, man, that music's amazing. I don't think I'm dressed up enough. I feel like it should be on the BBC or NPR or something. So,
yeah, we have to put our post voices on. Oh, hello there.
Yeah, exactly.
The Obi-Wan's going on. Joining David is Jeff Bracey, our director for Raincross.
Hello. Johnny, it's good to see you in person for a change as opposed to a text over Twitter.
Well, what can I say? You know, I hope the wait was worth it.
Oh, of course it is. It was worth it just to see this beautiful head of hair that you've got going on. So
yeah,
that is an astounding set of locks.
Yes, it is.
It's because I'm worth it. And finally, joining the chat is DT2 Comics. Yo, look at that background. Check it out. How's it going, my friend?
What's up? What's up? I'm good, man. It's great to see you in person.
Yeah, well. So, for anyone who's wondering what the hell's going on, all right. So, as everyone knows, I'm the EIC on Comic Crusaders, and I write reviews for Crusaders. As does Dave under Nemesis, Bracey, Jeff, who absolutely saves my bacon more times than I care to admit when he picks up extra reviews for me, and DT2 Comics. He has the lowdown on all like the Flash stuff and the CW stuff, and man, there's an opinion out there about DC or Marvel movies and TV shows. He's the guy to follow. That one right down there. Isn't that right?
Yep.
Plus, I host Sloppy Spoilers.
Oh, Sloppy Spoilers, of course.
Yeah.
Sloppy Spoilers. There you go. There's do I even have a trailer for Sloppy Spoilers? I don't think I do. Oh,
no, we got to do one of those.
Yeah, we have to do one. All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking some time out to chat with me. We're here to talk about Raincross Press. David, why don't you start us off? You are, as I understand it, owner, EIC, writer, debtor, creditor, the guy that puts the staples in the books.
Yeah, I'm the gopher. I'm the driver. I'm the whole. I serve up lunch. I create it, cater it, and everything else. You do all that stuff.
Did you get a promotion? Are you now a general dog's body?
Yeah.
So
I need to validate my parking, David, while you're at it.
I'll be right on that. Raincross Press. So some of you may know that I do work also for ASAP Imagination. One of their titles is above me somewhere. I always get confused. Messiah, but I write OPSEC for them. But on top of that, I've always wanted to start my own comic studio. So I've never wanted to be really a distributor, a publisher. But I did want to start my own comic studio to do other things, besides write for other people. And so Raincross Press was born a while ago to do self-publishing for some novels, and that still may happen in the future at some point. But this idea for this title, Blood World, came about in a roundabout sort of way, which was originally was going to be a novel, and I had written a whole history for this universe that I come with Blood World. I wrote almost 600 years worth of history preparing to write this novel of what the Earth was like and how the solar system had changed. Yeah, and that's the logo for Raincross Press right there. So this new comic studio that we've created. And just a quick story about that. Raincross, that symbol right there in the middle, is a symbol of the city I live in, which is Riverside, California. And it's a Raincross, and it's based off the Native Americans who lived here and the Spanish mission. And then that little feather there, I'm Native American as well. So that kind of symbolizes my heritage and also the fact that we're a writing company. So that's how we came up with the logo. So
Cool.
Raincross Press. So yeah, so we came up with this idea for Blood World, and I got to talking to these guys that I do sloppy spoilers with. And, you know, originally I had talked to Jeff about the idea, and he had an idea for a story, and I thought it fit well in this universe. I was like, I'm already writing another novel series. I was like, do I want to write another one? And even if I do, I'm not going to be able to fit all of the different stories in this huge setting I've created into one novel series unless I write, you know, a novel a year for the rest of my life, and still it'll be left undone, you know, and there's so many stories to tell. So I just, you know, and then I was thinking, what is the best way to tell the story? And I was like, I think it's in a graphic format. Okay. And I got to talking to these guys, and they were like, had all these different ideas within this story world that I created. And it just took off from there. And I was like, you know, this is perfect for Raincross. This is what we need to do. And really, and I hope you don't hold this against me as a Brit, you know, but I was like, you know, I've always loved 2000 AD and heavy metal, but
whoa. You can't come over here talking to me stealing 2000 AD.
I know.
Oh, right, get me DC on the phone now.
But Americans, we don't have anything like that. So I was like, you know what? We're small, but it's like we got to aim high. So it's like, you know what? That is our standard. It's like we want to eventually, you know, put out something that is at least similar to what 2000 AD is, and tell those kinds of stories, because I mean, they're the gold standard for science fiction and comics, you know? And so it's like, it's time for us to do something as Americans, but it's not just an American operation. We've got artists from all over the world. And, you know, and that's the whole idea, is that eventually we want to be a showcase for new artists and new talent to come in and just keep growing. But this is us starting right now with Blood World. So, I mean, that is it in a nutshell. So
cool. And that's the end of the pod. I'm joking. All right, okay. So, Jeff, 2018 is one of the quintessential anthology books in the comic place, whether it be over here in the UK, whether you get the graphics and the trades and whatnot over in the States and across the world. As art director, as writer, as artist, how free does it feel to be able to sort of go into a book and not be stymied to just one style of art or one style of storytelling?
You know, that's precisely what I wanted to see when we started putting this together. As the writers that we have in the group, we have 5 writers, 6 stories in this book. And when I started going over the scripts, you could see that everybody had a very distinctive and individual voice. And so right away, we weren't just looking for the best talent, but we were looking for talent that would pair well with each of these outlooks. And one of the things I've always liked, I've always been a big fan of 2000 AD, but also of heavy metal, which introduced me to so many wonderful European creators, is that everybody had their own particular sorts of art styles. And it, you know, I grew up obviously as an American reading DC, and primarily Marvel was my jam. And Marvel had a house style, which actually influences my particular style of artwork quite a bit. Very much a product of the 80s there. But
so, well, we have to stop there. When you say house style, Marvel art, 80s, who are we talking? Drop some names.
The main, like for instance, for me, my main influences from them would have been the 3 Johns: John Byrne, John Romita Jr., and John Buscema. And it's you can see they are all different, but there is sort of a commonality between how they approach the artwork for Marvel. I believe Marvel was the first company that introduced sort of the factory style of doing comic book art, where you had pencilers, inkers, colorists, letterers, and it just made for a swifter means of production. So I was looking forward to seeing people whose art reflected what we wanted to do. And we didn't just want to grab an artist and a writer. We actually wanted to make teams. So it was very important that we got people together to do interviews like this and make sure that they could be they could catch on to our passion, or that the stories ignited their imaginations. And we found, like, hey, which of these stories really catches your eye? Like, what fires you up? What makes you excited as an artist? So that's particularly what we were looking for.
Cool. And DT, how did you get involved in this?
I got involved in this because as they began to discuss the ideas, I was like, I knew instantly what it was I wanted to do. Saw my character, saw the world, saw everything, and then was like, we know you're too busy. Don't even worry about it. We got to go on. I'm like, I will make time, dog. I won't.
I will come down your house. I'm going to make sure.
He kicked in the door.
As a writer, what we have here is a rare situation, and I recognize a rare situation when I see it. Okay, when life gives you those kinds of opportunities, you're not supposed to spit it back in life's face. You're supposed to jump on it. So when you have a chance to create the way you like to create, when you have someone that respects the creative process, when you have someone that you've already worked with, and when you have people that are men of great integrity, because I greatly respect these men. I greatly respect Nims, Steve, Bracey, have worked with them, talked with them, and just seeing the kind of men they are, I just have great respect for them personally. It's rare that you get integrity and creativity and free reign to do what you want to do, and all of that energy flowing together. We're just so excited. See, that don't happen every day. You know, when you get in situations as a writer, all those elements many times are not in place. And when Nim started talking about how his vision is expansive, so he's like, not only are you creating a story, you're creating a world, you're creating a section of this world in a larger backdrop. That does not happen every day. And then on top of all that, when you have someone with Bracey's expertise on art and creature design, and also we both think like filmmakers. So someone that's going to be meticulous about the design and the detail of your characters. See, that's a writer's dream. So I was like, yeah, I'm in on this. I'm all the way in. Both my feet is in this. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we like to say about the world is that, you know, one of the taglines we like to throw around is that within Blood World, within the solar system, you know, there's 300 billion people with 300 billion different stories. You know, it's like, we'll never tell them all. We can't even come close, but there's 300 billion different stories that we could tell, you know, of each of these people. They're probably not all exciting, but, you know.
And that's the genius of what, Nemesis here has created. He's created this incredible sandbox that allows each of us the opportunity to tell very distinct stories that still fit within the context of this world.
Cool.
But see, one of the things we do on Sloppy Spoilers is we look at content from multiple angles. We look at it as fans. We look at it as longtime comic readers. We look at it as writers. And so we're always sharpening our skills, if you will, on what solid content is, what a good story is, what it isn't. When someone has respect for lore and mythology. And again, as a writer, that's the kind of environment you want to be in. That's the kind of environment that the classic writers created, the heroes that we love in. You know, wouldn't you like to be in the room when Stan Lee and Steve Ditko are talking about Spider-Man?
I think, to be fair, I think Steve Ditko would be like to be in the room when Stan Lee and Steve Ditko are talking about
right. You know, and we know now from some of the things we see now, some of those rooms we wouldn't want to be in, because some of the people in those rooms now make a point to destroy the lore. Like their goal, we just did Green Lantern Beware My Power. And we're like, they make a point to kind of diss what's gone on before. But we have an opportunity here to create that kind of thing. That don't happen every day.
So then, Dave, I've got to ask this question then. Is this why your reviews are so late on Comic Crusaders right now?
What's that?
Is this why your reviews have slowed down on Comic Crusaders?
Yes, this is true.
I'm just,
you know,
just joking.
You know,
I'm just joking.
no, but no, it is. I mean, you know, DT kind of warned me, you know, when I was talking about doing this and everything. He's like, know what you're going to get into. He's like, I've done this before. He's like, it's going to be a lot of work, and it is, you know. But you know what? I never thought that I would want to do this, but I'm so passionate about this that even though it's a lot of work, I'm enjoying all of it. And I never thought I would say that I would enjoy doing contracts and interviews and, you know, all that other stuff that you got to do. But hey, this is a passion project, and hopefully, it's going to turn into a whole lot more than that as well. So
explain a little bit to me then, because you've got this concept, this universe that's got
sure.
3,003, and this is for everyone, so feel free to jump in. You got this concept, this blood world, where there's all these different stories kicking around and stuff. How do you guys then sort of assign, if that's the right word, the right artist and the right writer? Is it something that you guys? So DT was mentioned, this is my story, this is the one I'm going to do. How do you kind of, I guess, negotiate to get the best out of everybody from that point of view?
Well, I could start with that, and then I can let DT and Jeff pick up on their parts. Like I said, Blood World is a whole setting that I created in anticipation of writing a series of novels that follows one specific character. Mm-hmm. And I will say that character is something called a blood wraith, and I could talk about that later if we get to it. But that character was going to be the focus of a series of novels, and that character's story, or at least as much of it as we could get per issue, is going to be in Blood World. But that was so very narrowly focused on this one area of this universe in this group called S3, the Soul Scientific Symposium. And they're one of two groups that exist outside of Earth. And they were founded by a bunch of people that fled Earth in the 2300s when they could get off Earth, because Earth is turned into a rotting cesspool, So everybody who could get off Earth got the hell off Earth, So, and then their main rivals in the solar system are another group called the Ganymede Monarchy, and they're made up of religious rebels who were also cyber technology, and they stole a bunch of ships and fled Earth, and then the Earth government caught up with them and punished them, and they ended up crash landing and forming their own government. So that was going on. And then, but meanwhile, on Earth, everything is still crumbling. So the remains of this one great civilization is there. Oh, so yeah, so this is the main coat of arms for the Ganymede monarchy, for their royalty. So, and there's a bunch of symbolism that goes on here that talks about, what it means, these different aspects of the Ganymede monarchy. But this is the main coat of arms for the monarchy. And then the current monarch is Queen Elizabeth of Ganymede. So she is the current monarch of the Ganymede monarchy. So, and that's going into, and there's there's a ton of stuff to talk about there. There's a lot of background. When I say that I sat down and I wrote all this down, I've probably bored these guys to tears with all of that information. But
hanging his head, just like, God, no, not again. Please, please don't tell me again. I know how the world was formed.
Yeah, so I that was basically how I came into this. Is I wrote all of this. I established what the technology was and how it moved forward and how all of these things happen. And I created the sandbox for all of them to play in, and I knew what stories I wanted to tell. But then I shared what the world was like in current year. So current year in our story setting is 2587. And then these guys looked at all of that and came back to me and said, I'd like to tell a story here. I'd like to tell a story there. And then when they decided where they wanted to go, my job at that point is kind of look at it and make sure that it doesn't break the world, and then fit it into the world at large as it happens. But then these guys took it and ran, and they're world builders in their own rights. And that's where, I'll hand it over to DT and Jeff, but, they took what they wanted to do and then ran with it and fleshed out the world even more. So, one of my dreams, and I'm going to get done talking here in a second and let these guys go, is that I used to say all the time, is like, if I could write something 1/10 as good as Dune, I would die a happy man. Well, I don't think I will be able to do that on my own, but I'm hoping that eventually Blood World could be remembered that way, that it will launch that type of thing. So, and that's a lofty ambition, but if you don't aim for the stars, you can't reach them. So,
Fair shout. So I suppose, Jeff, the difference between Blood World and 2000 AD is 2000 AD can be quite spurious. It can be all over the shop, different things. It's not all interconnected for the majority of the part. This is.
It will be. It will be. Now, the stories in particular that Nemesis is telling, he bookends the story as we're laying out the book. His first story deals with the Ganymede monarchy, and his last story deals with the blood wraiths from S3. And so we start off Earth, and then when we get to the final chapter in the book, we have people from which moon are they on?
The S3,
Yeah.
they're from Titan.
Yeah, they're on Titan, and they make their way back to Earth, because even though Earth has become this hellish landscape, this backwater at best, there's still things that draw people to Earth. There's old world technology. There's resources there that you don't find in the rest of the solar system, and so it does keep tying things back together. And so there's an acknowledgement of Earth that these governments and empires beyond the planet Terra have to acknowledge, even if they don't do so publicly. Nim does a great deal of having characters trash talk Earth, but they have to keep going back to Earth for various reasons. Now, when it came to telling the stories, as he was creating the world and expounding on it, when we because we often pitch ideas to each other to get everybody's opinion on what do you think of this story? What do you think of, we'll put out passages and get people to read it and kind of proof it for us and see if it works. And when he was expressed interest in my initial story, as he started explaining how his world worked and how we can make my story fit within it, I got an idea for something completely new, and I pulled back on the original story I had. And I think this is what happened for each of us. As he details this world, we all gravitated to certain sections. Steve, for instance, he's going to talk about people who are coming from the outer rim who've actually left the solar system, and they're starting to come back in.
Yeah.
DT and I thought that the wastelands of Terra, of old Earth, would be a wonderful playground for what we have to do.
Cool.
Michael has got a story. He's doing a really interesting noir story on S3, and it just continues like this. So, we all found something that appealed to us.
Yeah, the image that you have in the background is actually some concept art we're using for the S3 hub cities. So these hub cities are like 50 miles high off the moons of Titan and other moons, off the moon of Titan and other moons around Saturn. So these huge cities.
So in my case, being a world builder myself, as Nim has said, we're all very meticulously detailed when it comes to things like that. I started thinking, he explained to me that Earth had suffered numerous wars and virtually every ecological disaster that has been promised to us since the 1960s forward. So it's had massive global warming. There's a giant hole in the ozone right above where North America used to be. There's a nuclear volcano that creates a nuclear winter. A good 70% of the surface water of the Earth, I've flipped it. 70% of the surface world is now land-based instead of water, and a lot of the water, the many layers of the surface water, are acidic from acidic rain, and it's just a nightmare place. And
So it's a happy story then.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I decided with all this heat and radiation and the strangeness of the environment, I wanted to create a functioning, or at least presumably functioning, ecosystem in a way, even though I'm stretching scientific limits quite a bit. And so there's a lot of mutation. And I'm telling you this kind of Conan-esque story of this mutant barbarian who is making his way in the world, but he also has a greater mission. The cultured people, they created these 10-mile-high cities called spires. And this is where the elite remnants of the world, they managed to save themselves from the disasters.
And
this is my hero right here. This is Fellhand.
It's like I've done this before, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty darn good sort of thing.
We even have coffee mugs and everything. So
and Fellhand
that shows we made it. So
yeah,
he's a three-armed barbarian because I love the idea of asymmetry. For this, even though a lot of my previous art is very symmetrical, I want something very asymmetrical. And he finds it's a weird mix of so many things. It's a Conan story. It's John Carter of Mars. It's Dune. Even a little bit of Excalibur in there. I started off just wanting to tell a sci-fi version of a hack and slash kind of fantasy run. Very, very much influenced by Thundar the Barbarian, the 1980s cartoon inspired by the work of Jack Kirby. And it's become this crazy thing where I decided, like, oh, some of the bands of mutants will actually revere the spires as gods because they never see the people inside the spires. They just know they have this effect in the world. So there's this great paganism. And it also became this story of a class struggle against them. And the quote unquote magic sword that my character gets a hold of here is a devastating piece of technology that was actually so dangerous it was outlawed by the Earth. It's a thing called the Singularity Blade because, hey, I've got to out lightsaber the lightsaber. So I've got a blade that basically is quantum entangled to a black hole, and it opens up a window to the most destructive force that we know of in the universe, and it's a devastating weapon. That's not it, actually.
Oh,
that's a spaceship that looks like a sword.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
This is actually that is a spaceship for an Inquisitor, and that Inquisitor is being written by Steve. So you would all know him as Shadewing out there on Twitter, and he's writing about an Inquisitor who is a religious zealot. I guess that's the best way to put him. But he's out there on the frontier in the asteroid belt, and he's part of this group of people that has come back into the solar system and are now establishing their foothold there under the noses of Ganymede and S3. So
yeah, he's part Puritan, part Paladin, and part witch hunter.
All right.
And I wish he was here to talk about that because that's a really fascinating take he's got going. But my character will basically end up raising a jihad against the people of the Spires, and it becomes a holy war between these two factions, and he has the one weapon that can potentially bring down these megalithic cities because it's an incredibly destructive piece of technology. And there's all kinds of crazy things going on. Players that I obviously can't get into for spoiler reasons. That
no spoilers.
So much manipulation. To quote Frank Herbert, who's a big influence on me, there's plots within plots within plots.
Yeah. One of the things that you'll see, when the book comes out is that the technology all has a common origin. So everything goes back to Terra. So, these spires are 10 miles high and you have this technology there. And some of this technology never made it off Earth. But like if you look at the hub cities on, so there will be some throughput there. So if you look at the hub cities of S3, they have taken this and then over the centuries have improved upon it. Whereas most of the people who are able to build things or invent things left Earth. And so all of what is left on Earth is crumbling. So they can't even support their own infrastructure. So it's kind of like Idiocracy, the Mike Judge movie.
So DT, get involved because, David T is taking. He's like a takeover Ted over there, isn't he? He's like never shuts up. So, you've got these aspects. Well, what element have you worked on then? Because you are a really strong presence on Twitter, and you are quite vocal around aspects of TV and different how superhero shows and stuff work. So. Does that stand you in good stead when it comes to sort of like analyzing your work to make sure that you don't fall into the same sort of traps?
It's a challenge that I welcome because it can only make you better as a writer. And if I don't make it, people will let me know, but I'll be better than I was when I started. So if I don't get 100% and I made less, I'm still better than I was. So my goal is to write good stories. So I'm not really worried about stuff like that because anything like that, it makes your game better. It's like tennis players. So I'm not really worried about that, number one. Number two, one of the keys is always write about things that you're passionate about.
Good call.
There won't be any fire in your story if you don't care about it. So my story has to do with themes of like faith versus science, themes of personal responsibility, themes of, just how do you deal? The beauty of good science fiction is that it gives you the expanded world, things that don't necessarily exist or don't exist yet. But in them are very human emotions and experiences, and that's a connecting point. That's the strength of Star Trek. And so that's the way I tend to think. I love the fantastical settings. I love the world build. What's the story in it, though? Because that's actually what we care about. So that's always my approach. And like I said, whatever I might miss, then I'll just write it better next time.
I don't think it's a case. Good job. I don't think it's a case of miss. I think sometimes we're all victims of this. Whether we're writing or whether we're drawing or whether we're writing reviews or whatever it is, we can get too focused on what we're actually doing right there that we forget to look at the bigger picture sometimes. I know I like to doodle, as people have seen on pods before. I'm nowhere near as good as anybody at all, but I get really, really sort of like focused on getting the inks right, and then I get to the point where I've inked it too much, and it's like, right, that's spoiled. Next. So I get we sometimes we need to draw the piece or write the piece, put it to one side, go and chill out, go and watch the Dolphins win, and then come back and then look at it with fresher eyes.
Well, two things. I just had to do that with the final draft I turned in because I know myself. I'm like, okay, well, I've edited, I've changed, I've tweaked as much as I'm going to, and I know after this point, I'm going to have a thing of diminishing returns. I have watched other creators destroy perfectly good pieces of content because they couldn't stop tweaking. And so I was like, I have to find my point. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have to let this go. Yeah. So if I missed anything, I'll find out later. That's thing number one. Thing number two, they've heard me say it before, but I'll say it here. I always reject the language of the hater at the gate. See, so haters' language don't get in my life, don't get in my head, don't get in my vocabulary. Why would you listen to people that hate you? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I instead look up words for myself. Anything that's a cliche or a trope did not start out as a cliche or a trope. It was fresh when it was created. And so you can create new ones. You can take old ones and turn them on the ear. Joss Whedon is a master of that. Whatever you might think about him personally, he's a master of taking a cliche or a trope, and so is Mark Waid. One of my favorite examples, Lord, because I got to meet him personally and talk to him, and he's a trip.
I've interviewed
Legion of Superheroes. We've been dealing with Colossal Boy all this time. Mark Waid said his power is shrinking to human size. His name is Microlad. He comes from a race of giants. So his power is not growing like Apache Chief or Gigantic. That's his normal state. His power is shrinking to human size. So his code name in his mind is Microlad. He said, I keep telling you, it's not Colossal Boy. I thought that was brilliant. And see, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So, so we have opportunities to create new tropes or take established tropes and look at them in a new way. So that's what I'm saying. That kind of language, because it doesn't matter at what time you live on Earth. There have always been established traditional things. There are new things being birthed, and then there's everything in the middle.
Fair enough. Fair shout. Right.
I'd say another advantage we have is that, like, having worked on our own individual projects, you usually have to turn to, like, your wife or somebody to look at your stuff for a set of fresh eyes. But here, every time one of us puts up a new piece of content, everybody takes a look at it, and we sort of police our own. Like, hey, this is great, but like this kind of didn't work a bit, and like give it a little tweak. And like DT says, there comes a point where one of the best pieces of art advice I ever got was, no piece of art is ever completed; it's merely abandoned. Because there comes a point where you have to stop, or you will work it to death.
That's so true. So
yes,
true.
you will. Yes, you will. And cliches, and one of the things I learned also about writing is that cliches and tropes aren't bad.
No, they're not.
They're not bad. When we meet Neo, we see the Messiah trope. We see the Messiah that doesn't know he's Messiah, and his journey in that first movie is summarized what Morpheus says, he is the one. It's one of the coolest moments in the film. That trope has been around forever. So that's what I mean. That kind of stuff isn't bad. It's how you work with it, how you frame it,
how you present it.
You could do like you did with Ray and create a Mary Sue. create someone who's a savior just because you say they are. They don't have to earn it, that kind of thing. And that's the wrong direction. That's the other way, that kind of thing. So to me, that's a part of the game. See, that's the privilege we all have as writers. We get to create. Everybody don't have that privilege. So it's a challenge to me. It's not a negative.
Well, I think before we go to a break, I'll just quickly say the only good Matrix movie is the first one. And on that note, it's an advert for one of our other shows. We've mentioned some classic names. We've talked about Stan Lee's been in there, Buscema, Byrne, those sort of people. So there's only one place on the UCPN where you're going to hear about those guys. It's the Old Timers Comic Book Show.
Do you want to find out what makes the professor do his happy dance? Check out the Old Timers Comic Book Show, only on the UCPN.
That's right.
That was great.
The Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the Hulk aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. There you go. For all you retro comic fans, check that show out.
I think that's my happy place now, seeing Bud doing that.
Yeah.
I love that hillbilly fiddle music going on in the background.
It's a really fun show. Check it out. It's comics from yesteryear. There's me, the Professor, 13th Crusader, just sit around and talk about comics. It's great.
Are Ginger and Marianne there too?
No. No. And the dulcet tones of the voiceover were Mrs. H. So there you go.
Awesome.
Right. Right. Let's have some characters.
Okay.
Where should we go? Should we have? Well, I think times should be that we should do this one. Let's see. It's a bit timely. He says, not Marvel timely. My old timer's coming out there. Who's this young lady?
Hail to the Queen, baby.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes. This is Queen Elizabeth of Ganymede, the Ganymede monarchy. She is the current queen of that faction. What is really cool about her, I don't know if you probably can't see it, but the whole thing about Ganymede is that they have embraced transhumanism instead of genetic engineering. And they are descended from religious rebels who fled Earth. And so her hair, it's kind of a little difficult to see at this point, but her hair has fiber optics and wiring all inner.
Is that better?
Yeah, great. And that actually attaches into her shoulders. And so all of that is so it controls, through the microprocessors in her brain to be able to control. And one of the cool things in the story, in the first story of the Ganymede monarchy, is when she confronts her cousin, Baron Chabot, who is basically Gaston in the Ganymede monarchy. Think of that Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
She has software in her. So as she's walking down this aisleway, the software forces all of her subjects to kneel and prostrate themselves before the queen of the Ganymede monarchy, And but her story and the story of the Ganymede monarchy, and really the two stories that bookend, the way I looked at it is I'm bookending the issue, and the stories told by the other writers are very personal stories that are following the journeys of individuals within this world. And so I'm writing the stories about the bigger people within the universe that are going to drive the story world forward. So Elizabeth, is controlling the fates of billions of people. And the actions of this blood race squad that finishes up the issue are also doing things. They're going to drive the fates of billions of people throughout the universe as this thing goes forward. And believe it or not, Jeff and I have planned out probably the next 5 or 6 years worth of stories and how it's all going to go forward.
It's like you're the new J. Michael Straczynski. Here we go. Yeah. It's getting all Babylon 5 going on.
Yeah, we've got huge plans on how all this is going to change. And the really cool part is that even if it doesn't affect some of these people directly, you're going to see this pop up in the story. So you may have Felhan the Barbarian at one point walking through the Terran Wastes, and he has no idea that suddenly war has broken out between S3 and Ganymede. But as he's walking, a battleship may tumble out of orbit and crash right in front of them, you know? So,
Yeah.
and that's the symbol of this larger war that's going on. And there'll be things like that happening all over the place. And eventually some of these people are going to get caught up in this stuff. It just takes time, you know? So this first issue, we're really laying the groundwork. And I think the best way I could describe, you know, you saw Isabeth there and her story with what's going on there. It really is a combination of Dune and Game of Thrones meets a little bit of Warhammer 40K. That's what you get in that Ganymede Monarchy story. So
DT, as you were saying about tropes and so on and so forth, influences are equally important because the influences can help new readers understand the tone that you're going for.
Yes. So my influences are Mark Waid, Alex Ross, Joss Whedon, in terms of this thing, Peter David.
I love some Peter David. There's a name he's on here a lot of. Some of his Star Trek stuff and the novels are fantastic.
And this was a piece of concept art that was submitted by an artist who was working with us, and he's going to be working on something completely different. But this was, we asked the artist to give us sample panels based on a sample script I had written up because I wanted to see how they would interpret a very basic panel. I said, you know, pick one panel, draw it for us, and thumbnail it and send it to us. And so one of the artists, and you know, we'll make those announcements later, but one of the artists sent this in, and we ended up hiring him to do some other stuff for us.
And see, one of the things, now looking at this panel also, what Bracey talked about was the way he had already established the wastelands of Earth, and then I came in with a completely different thing. So when he thought about how can this be possible, the solution or the solutions spawned whole new areas of storytelling that we're all going to take advantage of. And so dealing with something like this, because I like the motion is there, the terror is there, you're not sure what that thing is, that kind of thing. But part of the fascination for me for this particular story world is what are the possibilities of life forms? So given the world that Nemesis created and given the conditions that Bracey created, what would live and how would that impact if there are humans in the mix? And so I came up with a backstory on how some of the human relationships developed and where they came from and all different kind of stuff. So everything's kind of feeding on each other, but now I just feel like I have this expansive sandbox.
And this is
kind of like Star Wars, actually. Star Wars, you have humanoid, you have tech, and you have what we would call alien life. So it feels a little bit like that and Dune. So,
and this is where the really cool collaboration part comes from, because, you know, I created what Terra was like, and these guys took it and ran with it and did some things with it and then come back to me. And I'll be honest, I mean, you know, the other writers have done this as well. There are times when people come back to me and I'm like, oh man, how is this going to fit into the whole universe, you know? And then I got to go back and we have a back and forth. But the fun part from my aspect is in taking what they've done and fitting it into what I have written previously and writing new history and new stuff that fits all that in, you know, and why some of these things exist, you know. For instance, DT story has people, I can share that they're where they come from. Is that cool? You cool with that, DT? Yeah. So they come from underground. You know, originally they fled underground, and that's part of the history, was that there was a migration. Yeah, there was a migration underground. And it's like, so then I came up, well, why are there all these underground tunnels? And it's like, well, it was because there was a rail system to transport goods between the Spire cities and everything, you know, and there was a fast, you know, so we come up with these things, and that's how we play off each other, and this creates it. And being the person that's kind of overlooking this, dare I say, I get my head big here. I've got this, you know, I'm God of this world. You know?
Yeah. Is this why he talks so much? Because he thinks he's God. Is that his deal? Is that why he's like giving it this? What do you mean? Now he's going to come walking down the stairs with tablets of commandments.
Yes.
What can we say? You know?
Kill this character.
It's his world, and he's very excited about it.
Yeah. But I mean, but it's so much fun to do that, you know, and it's like, and Mike Nunnally is another one of our writers, and he's created this noir story within S3, which was my, you know, this group that's all about genetic engineering, and that was completely out of left field. I was like, Mike's going to do a noir story, yeah, and this is the symbol for the blood race. which is the story that's going to back end everything. And the Blood Race are they're the boogeymen, basically. They are
they're the John Wicks.
they are a group of assassins and and shock troops for S3. And what I can say is that their big their big ability is that they have the genetic capability to be able to real time change their body to do pretty much whatever they want. They can grow weapons. They can change their body to withstand huge amounts of G-force, to grow armor, any number of things. However, with any writing project, you can't give someone a superpower without a downside.
Yeah.
So with all of this, every time they use their ability to genetically change their body, there's a chance they'll damage their body. They'll genetically damage their body. If they do enough damage to their body, they'll die. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
You eat so much pizza.
Here's a wonderful way of how the collaborative effort works. Nim gave me a basics like, okay, the world has suffered global warming and there's acid rain. And I took that to the utmost extreme I could. Like every ecological disaster we've been threatened with since the 60s, I've compounded it all in there. And so I had this blasted world, and I was doing research on Venus and Mars and kind of mushing them together in the biosphere of Earth. Then DT comes along and says, like, okay, I want to tell a story in a swamp. I was like, there are no swamps. Heck, there's almost no water. Where's the swamp coming from? So I got like, okay, let's make this work. And so I decided, like, okay, there are cave systems all throughout the crust of the Earth. This is actually a geological fact. And there are vast aquifers that are equal to oceans within. So, like, this can come up and bubble and supply some areas with enough water to produce swamps. The swamp water, the surface layer breaks down under the immense heat and radiation, and it forms these cloud layers, kind of like in the 1979 King Kong movie, that protects these areas from the sun so plants can actually flourish there. Now, the ecosystem I've created, there's so little water in nearly every other area. Everything is predatory, including plants, for moisture's sake. And so he has pockets of this, and that's like, and people who couldn't afford to live in the spires, who were shut out, they moved underground to avoid the radiation, the war, and everything else, all the monsters. And then, like, eventually they come up, and Nemesis hears that, and he's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. All right, we'll have these railway systems that are going around underground. We've got all this stuff, and everything everybody does just builds. And he's like, we're going to have an Amazon rainforest. Like, how do we have an Amazon rainforest? Like, oh, one of my characters wants to restore the Earth to the green world. She finds out that the Earth used to be green and blue and beautiful, and she wants to restore it, and finds out they had the technology to do it. They didn't use it. And he's like, all right, the spire that's here, they're actually experimenting with some of that technology. So the Amazon rainforest still exists. It's like, it just keeps feeding and building, and it's amazing, like, how we just keep working together. I imagine this must have been what it was like to be in the Marvel bullpen back in the day, when people would just go to each other's offices or cubicles and just start pitching ideas, and it would spark your imagination, and it would just take off these incredible flights of fantasy that ended up becoming the legends that we all grew to love.
Perfect. Well said. You should do this for a living. So David talked about how he has to sort of collaborate with everyone to make the middle bits, everybody's various middle bits, cohesive to the two bookends. As art director, Jeff, do you find that you also have to pull a little bit of editing magic to make sure that if characters do cross story, they remain consistent with?
Now, what I'm doing in this context, and David has given us a remarkable amount of freedom. He's kind of like a
he can't draw.
Well, even in terms of story, he's like a showrunner. He's like our Kevin Feige. We all have these ideas we want to do, these great stories we want to tell, this approach to the characters, and he'll go and check on. It's like, okay, you need to tweak this a little bit, you need to do that a little bit, but for the most part, we get away with basically everything we want to. It just needs to be fine-tuned and tweaked a little bit. And so when I looked at as an artist, I knew what to look at when approaching artists that these fellows might not have considered, because I've gone to art directors, I've worked in comics, I've tried to get hired by the bigger agencies, and just wasn't there for whatever reason at the time. My skill level wasn't there, or my my draftsmanship wasn't there yet. And it's a growth process as you become an artist, and you have to have a thick skin. So I've learned what to look for, and I want to make sure that people could do good character design. I want to make sure that they could do good sequential pages, and part of this is being able to tell a story, and also being able to lay out a page so it's easy for the eye to follow. You've got to know the little tricks to get people to move their eye around the page in an accurate way to tell the story properly. So these are some of the things I look for, because basically anybody can do a splash page or a pinup and things like that. It's the first thing you start doing when you're drawing. And then, of course, I wanted people to be able to illustrate the worlds. And that was one of the most challenging parts, because Mike's story in particular has a level of detail that you would expect out of somebody like a Mobius. It's really urban intensive, with like just so much character and detail. So we had to find somebody who could achieve that sort of look for us. And we did, thankfully. The guy's amazing. I can't wait to show him off.
Yeah, because these cities, it's really going to be, it's architecture intensive. And so it's like, take the most, art intensive Spider-Man issue times 1,000 as far as like the height of the buildings and everything, and the angles that have to be drawn at. And it's like we had to find someone that's able to do that and do that in sequential art. So
these, just to finish my point, these are the sort of things we wanted to do. And all the artwork you've seen so far, other than like this background that's behind us all here, I've been producing the art for that. Logos, the patches, the character designs, and I'm doing that for specific elements in each story. And then after that point, we'll just turn it loose to the artist, because I'm basically putting together kind of a style guide, if you will. Like, this is sort of how to expect these things. So we know what things are going to look like within the context of certain stories. And then once I have like a thing established, I'm going to leave it up to the artist. Like, okay, you see this, you get the idea, run with it.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Another character. Let's have a look. Who's this rather dapper-looking gentleman?
I will let DT and Jeff take this one.
Excellent.
DT, this is your playpen.
Okay. Well, this is an updated version of Yakuza, and they're in the story. And Jeff came up with, his initial question was, what would a professional suit look like in 2587? So we came up with a concept design, and I loved it. And so I said, all right, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use a whole bunch of stuff. So what do you do with the 2587 version of the Yakuza? What would that be like? What would they be thinking? How do they survive? What do they want? So we're going to be getting into all that.
Good.
Yeah,
look dapper, very, very sleek.
The idea for the suit came from DT decided in his regional world, because whereas mine is set in North America, his is set in the area of Japan.
Right.
And so he decided that the people who went underground there, who weren't able to get into Aspire, they didn't qualify or whatever reason, the criminal element, the Yakuza, kind of came back into vogue as they were in medieval Japan going forward. And so they managed to keep order by being ruthlessly honorable and practical. And part of that was maintaining tradition. And the 20th century tradition became the salaryman, the business suits, the power suits. And so there's an idea that when they're in the spires, they still kind of like to wear these silk suits with the ties and the white shirts and all that. And this becomes their uniform. Now people are free to dress in particular ways within the context of Asian sensibilities, but this is their mark, their badge of authority, their coat of arms, and all that. And so I thought it'd also be a neat idea if we had a more high-tech version of that for going outside the spire. And so it has the look of that business suit, but it's also laced with technology that will allow them to survive and be successful in dangerous environments.
Cool. Thought of everything. Excellent. All right. So we'll take a quick look. You've seen the banners throughout the pod. Here we go. This is your website. Let me just bring this boom straight up there. Welcome to Raincross Press. Check it out. The thing I like about this. You've got the art, you've got that sweeping, dare I say, Blade Runner-esque city going on there.
Yep.
You've also got a subscription element there. So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I need more information, I want more news, go to the website. You saw the banner, I'll put it up again. There it is. Then you can be able to go to the website, stick your email address in there, and as things happen, you'll get informed. Simple as. What could be simpler?
And I can tell everyone we have finished hiring all our artists. We are getting them ready to do some initial art for us in preparation for we're going to be crowdfunding this. But we've already, decided. I mean, each of these issues for Blood World is going to be 80 pages long. And I will say that we're going to be offering our bottom tier, as far as availability and pricing and everything, 80 pages of content for $10 for digital. So, I mean, I think that you can, I don't think you can go wrong with that. And then we are going to offer then our printed issue is going to be $30 for the 80 pages. And then if you want to buy digital and print, it'll be $35. And we do have a featured artist that's going to be coming on board with a variant cover. And that will be for digital and print will be $40. And then we're going to have stretch goals from there and everything. But that is the basic pricing we've set down right now. And I think that, give us a look. I think at $10, I think it's worth giving us a look. And especially for 80 pages, I think you're getting a lot for your $10. And I think you'll be very happy with what you see.
When you say crowdfunding, is that Kickstarter?
We're going to go with Indiegogo for a couple of reasons. Number one of which is that after the campaign is done, we still have the option to sell, to buy it now for a while on Indiegogo. So, which Kickstarter doesn't allow us to do. There's a couple other things that we're going to do with Indiegogo. And then I can say that eventually, once we get to issue 2, we will transition issue number 1 off of Indiegogo to another platform, a distributor. And we haven't signed that contract yet, so I can't announce it. But we'll be going to someone who distributes comic books. And it's a small press company that's growing, and we'll be distributing through them. So
there you go. Fantastic news. I think 80 pages for $10 is a steal, an absolute steal.
Price of a lunch.
Yeah. Well, it depends how much pizza you can eat.
Challenge accepted.
Excellent. Right, so there you go. The website's there for you to check it out. Dead simple. www.raincrosspress.com. Twitter is also available at Raincross Press for all your up-to-date information. And of course, if you want to see more of Jeff and his work, you can follow him on Twitter at Bracey452. He's got a deviant art ID at Bracey100. There you go. Gentlemen, let's go on.
And DT is at DT2ComicChat on Twitter. So
on Twitter.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, just like his name there.
Yep. So I think that's about it. It was great to talk to you, Johnny. It was awesome.
Cool.
So
excellent. Good luck with the book. It sounds fantastic. Being a Brit, I'm all about the 2000 AD love, so that's fits my sensibilities brilliantly there. So there you go. Cool.
They are the gold standard. They are the gold standard.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Thanks, gentlemen. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to check out UCPN for all your favorite shows, including DT.
Sloppy Spoilers.
There you go. And you saw the advert earlier. Of course, it's the Old Timers Comic Book Show. Trust me, blood dancers at the start and the end of the show every time.
Check out Comic Crusaders on Friday afternoons on East Coast time as well. So,
and just check me out because I don't have a show.
But he's beautiful. So
there you go. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate your time. I have been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes, and as always, adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.com, all about comic pop culture.